Okay, everybody, we're back. So welcome back. Again, for those of you new, I'm Lance Anderson, CEO of Lance AR. We deploy manufacturing industrial solutions for the enterprise space, which is why I'm really excited about this discussion here and the moderator. So this is engineering a new role for AR and VR in the post-pandemic future. And so I'm really pleased to bring up as our moderator, Kenneth Wong. He's the senior editor of Digital Engineering 24/7 and is really focused on the use of AR, VR, and mixed realities in the industrial and manufacturing space. Joining Ken will be Elizabeth Barron and Ken Sobel, but I'm going to let Kenneth do those introductions. So come on up, guys, and let's have a great panel. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. So glad to be in an in-person event because I've been doing Zoom meetings so long that I almost forgot what it's like to interact with real people. So here we are in person.
Yeah.
How are you, Elizabeth?
I'm doing great. So happy to be here.
Me too.
Woo-hoo.
And Ken?
Very excited to be here.
Very good. So I'm Kenneth Wong. I'm the editor for Digital Engineering 24/7. I cover the kind of technologies that these two panelists produce, so it makes sense that I'm talking to them. Normally I'll be recording the interview so that I can write an article, but today we're here to share. So let me start with some self-introduction. Elizabeth, would you mind introducing yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and your background?
Yeah, sure. Hi. So I'm Elizabeth Barron, and I'm a solutions enterprise person at Unity. And the beauty of what I do is I take the Unity platform and bring it to enterprise for holistic collaboration and communication. And prior to joining Unity, I spent 30 years and almost 11 months at Ford Motor Company, leading global immersive realities and doing real-time ray tracing and in VR back in 2014 and kind of growing that into that collaborative space. So that was the impetus for me to come to Unity, to take that type of approach, expand on it, and make it something that the XR world can take advantage of and all these enterprise companies can.
Very good. So from one Ken to another Ken, you have a really great name, if I must say so.
I know, stereo Kens.
So how about your self-introduction and tell us about who you are and what your company does?
Yeah, sure. My name is Ken Sobel. I'm an engineer entrepreneur, and I am the co-founder and CEO of a company called Hyperframe. And Hyperframe is a construction technology startup, and we are blending innovative mechanical design, advanced manufacturing, and mixed reality to deliver construction components into the commercial construction industry that are over 10 times faster to install. And so mixed reality is not everything that we do, but it is a critical part of it.
Very good. Thank you very much. So the way it works is that I'm going to let the panelists do opening speech first, their opening remarks. We're going to be talking about the role of augmented reality and virtual reality in the post-pandemic world. It seems like we thought it would be over by now, but apparently still has a lingering effect. So Elizabeth is going to start with the opening remarks, so please.
All right, thank you. So it's so great to be here at AWE. I'm excited to be live, connecting on a personal level with friends and colleagues in XR. And what has changed during our hiatus from seeing each other personally at the workplace? So it's been a while. What goodness can be realized out of the tragedy of COVID? I believe COVID produced a tolerance to try new methods to connect one another and safely and effectively, but also productively. And so this little chart kind of summarizes that concept of what XR can do for enterprise. So basically, it's an interconnected way of working where there's truth in data and insight in context. So you see something, you see relevant data that is produced by the authoring source along with other relevant data together, and then you can judge multiple functions within one environment. So it brings a spreadsheet to life for somebody who is an artist, and then it brings the beauty of design to an engineer. And so the idea here is, I think there's a little video here to cue, that we can produce these intricate and detailed worlds that you'll see a city, things are happening, but if it doesn't, it doesn't. But basically, we can create worlds that function like we need them to function and have engineering integrity and have design beauty, and then represent the heart of what the customer needs to see and experience. So there is a cool video, but we'll just move on. All right. And so you can create the worlds and then give them constraints so that there are operations and things that happen, just like there are operations and things that happen in real life. So you can kind of gamify engineering and design and then really get at the heart of the experience for the customer for the product. And XR is the perfect platform, and so much of this can be done either like yourself, by yourself, or connected in teams that are either geographically dispersed or together. And so if this is another way of looking at it, when you think about a vehicle, I come from the auto world, and all of the engineering that goes into that vehicle, and then think about the beauty of the vehicle and then the use of it. And so if you can provide a layer for companies to see things in a process way, then it sets them free from the technology wondering where the picks and clicks are for what they need to do. And they can really elevate the way that they design and engineer and get out of that, I have to go X number of layers deep in my project to find what I need. And so, we're just focusing on scalability, extensibility, cross-platform and device independence, and allowing teams to be self-sufficient in the use of XR. So you can really deploy it. One of my rules is 30 seconds or less to get in an XR world and understand it. So that's the value that XR has. And in the post-pandemic world, it's really relevant, and I think we're getting there right now. So, all right, I'm going to turn it over to Ken.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry that the video didn't work. Is there a way that the audience can actually search for it on YouTube? Or?
Yeah, we'll put that in some notes, yeah.
Okay, sounds good, thank you. Ken, your opening remarks, please.
Sure. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about my company, Hyperframe. And the interesting thing that you'll see is that we think we're a great example of how XR can be used with other technologies to create a new breed of product that wasn't previously possible. And so I'm going to tell you about how we make that happen at Hyperframe. And in order to explain it, I'm going to bring you to, let's say, the 14th floor of a high-rise under construction. This might be a building under construction in San Francisco or New York or Chicago or any other metro area. And this is where our customers work every day. And inside one of these buildings, you will find miles and miles of interior partition walls that are made out of metal studs. And here in 2021, construction crews are building these metal frame walls the same way that they were in 1950. And each piece that they install is custom measured, custom cut, custom aligned by eye and screwed into place. It is incredibly labor intensive, and the labor productivity of it has not substantially improved in almost 3/4 of a century. And so we take this decades-old practice, and at Hyperframe, we like to say that we make it easier than a video game. And it starts with this product here called the Trimble Xr10. This is basically a Microsoft HoloLens 2 that is adapted to a hard hat. And so the person installing Hyperframe on the construction site would wear one of these. And then they would walk onto that 14th floor of their building. And what they'll find waiting for them on the ground is a pile of Hyperframe parts that have been pre-manufactured with snap connectors and kitted for the particular area of the building that needs to be built right there. And so the way that this works from the installer's perspective is that they would pick up one piece off the top of their kit. They would glance at a QR code on the side of the part to scan it. And then they'll get some arrows that show them which way they should pivot their head. And then when they look that way, they'll find a hologram of the part they're holding in their hands in the location where it needs to be installed. And all they need to do to construct this wall is they need to snap the physical part in their hand over the hologram that they see through the HoloLens. And this is a night and day change compared to the way that metal frame walls are built today. And it is actually something that you can become a pro at with 5 minutes of training. It doesn't take you 2 years of apprenticeship to become competent at your job this way. And so the real reason that we're doing this is to radically improve the speed of commercial construction. And if you take a one-bedroom condo as an example, an installer using the Hyperframe product, using XR, can do in 4.4 hours what would normally take 67 man-hours. So it's almost a 15 times speed improvement. And we're at a really exciting inflection point for our company right now, where we're pivoting from engineering to commercialization. And in the second half of 22, Hyperframe will be used on some of the largest buildings under construction in California. And we're incredibly excited to make that happen and really turn XR into something that is practical for our customers in the construction industry.
Nice.
Very good.
Yeah.
Let's have a discussion then about what we can think of as the post-pandemic world. We hope that it'll be over and then we can put it behind us soon. But I'm thinking about, so Elizabeth, for companies like Unity, for example, people will still continue to play games, whether it's a pandemic or whether they're in home. But with the kind of collaborative work that we are doing in XR and AR, would they slowly go away because now people feel comfortable and they'll be going back to their conferences?
I don't think so. When people were able to freely congregate, the market was still growing. So I actually see the gamification of life kind of being a future construct for our society. And that is an industrial-based gamification, and then even some of the things that we do that are fun as XR and especially AR and mobile become easier to use. And I mean, if you go to the show floor and you look at the glasses that can display content to you in a projection and laser-based technologies, like that will only further gamify our life if we so choose. So it is here to stay, and it will change and grow in exciting ways that are, I think the key is more intuitive to how we think and what we need and when we need it.
Do you think most engineers and most people who need to do collaborative work, do you think it'll be a given? Like it is a given today that everybody will have a copy of Microsoft Office and a PC at home, that sometime in the future, it's a given that everybody will have a XR or a VR goggle that they can put on and go into a Zoom meeting the way that we would do today?
I think it's a given that we'll have an immersive way to interact with product or the making of product. And so like Hyperframe is an example of like that kind of interaction. I don't think the Zoom thing is necessarily the right way for, I mean, I'm sure it's got its application as far as like being immersive Zoom or being together. I think one of the things I learned at Ford that was, I think, pretty profound and pretty simple is that we would conduct a review that had, I remember looking at a meeting notice and there were 148 people invited to an immersive review. And it's like, that just sounds like chaos. But really, what they were all looking at was the vehicle. They weren't thinking about each other, except for what each other had to say about that vehicle. And so that type of interaction I see growing, because when you focus on product and multiple people provide their view, and it's not like about me or my stereo Kens, it's really about the product, it's easy to have so many people involved, so many people immersed, and you can be home. I mean, a lot of the companies right now using Unity are doing product development at home with gamer headsets. So that is the trajectory that we're on.
So Ken, it makes sense that in the middle of the pandemic, people can't really go to the construction site and work together closely because of social distancing rules. So they have to work as much as possible through goggles and AR and VR. But when people can go back to construction site, would they say that's the preferred mode? We want to be physical, tangible, forget about HR.
No, I don't think so. One of the things about construction is that there are so many different stakeholders involved in the construction of a major building. There are owners and architects and engineers and superintendents and carpenters. There's so many people involved. And I think part of what happened over the last year and a half is that the pandemic forced a lot of those stakeholders to think about how they could communicate even though they couldn't meet in person. And I think maybe that experience showed them some new technologies that they wouldn't have otherwise adopted for maybe another few years. Yeah. And now that they see how that could make their lives more efficient in terms of perhaps an architect not needing to commute from Oakland over the Bay Bridge to go to a construction site, maybe using an XR application, they could be there virtually. I don't think after the pandemic ends, whenever that happens, that architect will suddenly want to sit in 45 minutes of traffic.
Good point. I don't.
So, no, I don't think that any new adoption of technology, whether it's XR or otherwise, that occurred during the pandemic will regress.
Okay. Let's think about the difference between mobile VR and AR and the kind of the goggle headset-driven, the higher quality, higher fidelity kind of AR VR. What are the scenarios in which, going forward, Elizabeth, what are the scenarios in which mobile is quite sufficient? You just want to point your phone or tablet and do what you need to do. And what are the scenarios where you feel like we really need the headset and the full high resolution?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Because everything is on a continuum. I mean, life is. And there's the physical world and the virtual world and everything in between. And so the beauty of XR is that there's a technology that meets you where you're at and where you need to go and what you need to understand. And if I just need to know like a location, like in Hyperframe of some structure, then MR is an ideal application for that. If in automotive, since I know that so well, automotive still uses clay models, and they still very much like the physical world. But if they want to make a change, using their mobile to highlight an area on a model and see what their change might be is an amazing way of quickly understanding things. And communicating across many people through mobile or tablet in the industrial space is an excellent way of understanding context and bringing that to a large amount of people. But there's a time when being personally immersed in a problem provides insight that you cannot get through a tablet, through the level of abstraction you have from a tablet or the level of abstraction from the phone or the mobile. And in those cases, the insights that you get are so profound that VR could be the only choice that's a really viable choice. And a lot of that has to do with bringing the experience of product to somebody so that they can see insight. And the way that manifests is that people have this huge knowledge base. They have all this experience that they know. And when they can personally connect to the problem, and even if that's an engineering problem, it doesn't have to be a problem that like is the customer using the product. It could be an engineering problem. But when they can personally connect to it, their synapses fire quicker because there's more of a relationship there. So it really is a spectrum of, and along that spectrum is an answer for you in the XR space.
Ken, what do you think? What about the customer base that you serve? What are the areas where you feel like mobile is quite good enough and you don't really need to invest in it? And what are scenarios where the mobile is actually reaching the limit?
I think, at least in applications that we've looked at, you could implement an application on either platform, but there are pros and cons to doing so. And so in construction, the benefit of a mobile device is that it's universally accessible. Everybody has one. Mm-hmm. And our customers can potentially use their application without any hardware investment. So that's the benefit. For us, the drawback, and for the reason that we advocate for the Trimble Xr10 is that specifically for a lot of construction and industrial tasks, it's really important to keep your hands free so you can do things with your hands. And if you can just imagine in that brief little presentation I gave you, if you had to like hold an iPhone up here while you're like carrying a 12-foot long construction piece in the other hand, it's going to be a really uncomfortable experience and maybe a dangerous experience.
And probably inaccurate too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, it's really a matter of pros and cons. And for our customers, in order to convince them one way or the other, like if we think the Xr10 is a better experience, then it's incumbent on us to prove that it will generate a return on investment for them. Mm-hmm. Right? We need to prove to them this is not buying a $5,000 XR device is not a novelty. It will make your construction crews faster than if they were using phones. And so I think that will come up a lot, specifically in construction and industrial applications.
Makes sense. In some cases, your hand-free experience is what is needed for your site. So, yeah. Oh, talk about hand. Let's think about the tangible sensations that are really difficult to simulate, right? Because, for example, there's an interesting company called OVR that now actually allows you to simulate scent.
Yep.
Like the kind of smell that you'll be exposed to if you are simulating certain things. So what are the scenarios where that tangible feeling, haptic sensation is important? And what are the situations where you feel like, understanding the visual and understanding the layout of something is enough and you really don't need to figure out what kind of electric shock you might get when you touch something?
That's really funny. So there's a third way of doing it, and that's combining the physical world and the virtual world.
Yeah.
And combining it not through a wearable device that gives you, either touch or force feedback, but serious, like I'm in this chair and there's a virtual chair that represents this physical chair. And when I'm in the virtual world and I look down, I see these arms and they slope down and I can physically grab it and use my own hands. And then if you provide a view of my hands in the virtual world, I have an extreme connection to my physical world virtually. And that's amazing. And there's, like during the opening keynote, Ori talked about the Metaverse or the Schmetaverse. And it was like kind of like, okay, that's an overused term and, but it's a good term. And I think there is a metaverse for the physical world and the virtual world, but also like it made me think about the maker movement. And the maker movement used to be kind of like what we're talking about the metaverse now. It was like a buzz phrase where everybody was talking about that. But I think the maker movement, 3D printed parts that are actionable, that work in the virtual world, allow you to get haptic feedback in a way that's really novel and very specific to the task that you're trying to understand in virtual reality. So an example of that would be, of course, I come back to auto. I'm sorry, everybody. But if you're seated in, if you're the driver of a vehicle, or even if you're, in an autonomous vehicle, and there's some controls and displays, make those controls and displays out of, just 3D print them, and put a microcontroller in them, and then actuate them. Turn that knob and listen as your volume increases on your radio. Hit the button and watch something change in your environment according to what you expect. And everything is exactly where it should be, and it makes perfect sense. So I think that the physical world and haptics are very important, but passive haptics is another approach. It doesn't have to be active haptics. And we can learn from all of these different methods. Now, oil and gas and some other areas, if you're doing exploration of the, Earth, you don't necessarily have to touch that. That doesn't make any sense. And so there's a time and a place for everything, but I think that connection to the physical world for products that people actually do interact with is really important.
So if you are training somebody to use VR to learn how to spray paint a car, for example.
Indeed.
Do you give them something that has the same weight?
The same weight? You might even give them the sprayer, and then you put a microcontroller in the sprayer, and then when they press the trigger, it has the feel of that, but they're in a virtual world, and they're literally, and then it's actuated, so the amount of paint that comes out varies by how much you trigger. And then you're spraying, and you get a much better muscle memory of what you've learned. So screwdrivers, sprayers, like all kinds of tools for training, for maintenance, and simulation of different tasks. That type of approach is just, it's made for that.
So that's the sort of thing that'll be rather counterproductive if you train them on a joystick, for example.
Exactly, because it's, once again, a level of abstraction from what they do in the real world, and the amount that they learn will be less. It will be. And then if they have to learn a new paradigm, so if they have to hit A and B and hit this trigger and do this, that isn't how it will happen in the real world, and they will not have that one-to-one correlation that they could if they were using that actual device and it was just instrumented for the virtual environment.
Ken, what about you? How do you solve the problem where if you're in a virtual world, there are some physical things that you just cannot feel because it's made of pixels?
Hyperframe in particular, and in my background in particular, we don't deal with virtual reality so much. But I have to agree with a lot of the things Elizabeth said. I mean, that's like somebody can go off and create a company with the fake paint sprayer idea right now. I think that's fantastic.
It's true.
But the whole, especially in virtual reality, the whole idea is that you're trying to, in like an industrial application like that, you're trying to simulate the real world as closely as possible, right? And one of the things that we do in XR for Hyperframe is that the things that we are rendering in your field of view that are fake, we actually try to make them look as fake as possible.
Smart.
So that our users understand what's real and what's not. A lot of times, if we were to illuminate a wall stud in a certain location and it was gray and it kind of blended it with the background, we actually tried that at first, and our users couldn't. They said they couldn't see it. And we said, well, it's right there, but they thought it was real. And so that's why we started making all of our holograms green, so that they could see that between the difference between real and fake.
Yeah.
So there are situations where you actually really need to make it very clear what is virtual and what is real, so that you wouldn't confuse one for the other in your interaction.
Absolutely.
Audience, start thinking about your questions, by the way. I'm going to ask these panelists about the challenges that we need to overcome, and then after that, we would really like to welcome your questions about the post-pandemic world and how you envision we should be working, or the role of XR, AR, VR in the post-pandemic world. to the workflow that you have to tackle. So let's talk about the industry challenges. Are there some hurdles that we need to solve? Are there some problems that as an industry we need to solve to get ready for a massive adoption of AR/VR?
There are many challenges. There's much progress, but there are many challenges. So I think one is the wearability and just the ease of getting in that world. Like I said, I had that tenet of immersion with 30 seconds or less to get in and understand your world and just be able to do what you need to do. And I think that a lot of XR is still a little bit too complicated or buggy or inconsistent. So that's one thing. I think there's, and that leads to scale. So scale is a huge issue for enterprise. So being able to take an idea and in XR and then make it work for thousands of people in a company usually means not doing the latest and greatest thing, but creating a solution that is repeatable and functional and works time and time again for thousands of people. And so I think there are issues of scale that we still need to overcome because I don't know how many times I would hear like, well, Elizabeth, there's this new device. Why are you still using that old headset? And well, because it works and it's the best thing that's repeatable, and every time a review happens, you can count on it. And so I think there's something about like the fear of missing out that in the XR development community and in implementers in companies kind of lends them toward like, I have to do the latest thing, otherwise I'm not doing the right thing. But really, I think one of the challenges is just stepping back and thinking about an implementation holistically and getting IT on board because, they can be the doctor no, like, no, you can't do that. No, it's the cloud. No, And then what do you do? Like, how do you implement something that requires such a change to the infrastructure of a major company without violating their security rules and making, wreaking havoc in the infrastructure that they have in place. So those challenges are very practical challenges. And then the other challenges are really, like things that we hear about on the show floor about the devices and implementation and how we integrate and all that kind of good stuff.
Some follow-up on the scale issue. In automotive, of course, obviously, when you put on the goggle, the expectation is that you are seeing the car in the real life scale so that you can see its scale and its proportions and things like that. Is there also a problem where the AR or the VR application cannot fully identify where I'm supposed to be located in that virtual world when I go in there so that it could correctly correlate my virtual avatar to the place where I'm supposed to be in that virtual 3D space?
Yeah, I think most of those challenges in auto have been solved. I'm sure they still exist if somebody's trying something new and there's a new paradigm for registering the physical and the virtual worlds. But in general, I think that part of it is pretty repeatable. So there's two types of scale. There's the scale of deployment, and then there's the actual like size of the vehicle scale, like, is it 1-to-1 or not? That can be a little challenging sometimes in different environments that have lighting issues and like other types of things to overcome. So I think those, in mixed reality, the registration of virtual to physical and getting the 1-to-1 can still be a little bit of a challenge, but mostly solved. And if a good repeatable solution is developed, it's really not much of a problem anymore.
Okay. Ken, what do you think? What are the challenges that as an industry, hardware makers, software makers have to solve to make it easier for people?
I'll talk about one thing for hardware and one thing for software. So at Hyperframe, we're asking our installers to wear an XR device basically all day long. And one of the things that we need to spend a lot of time on is comfort and ergonomics.
Right.
Because we're at the point where it might get a little uncomfortable after a couple hours, but the advantage of using it is so great that our customers might still want to keep it on. We want them to keep it on. And so it would be really nice if we got to a point where we didn't have to have that conversation anymore. It just, making it more lightweight, more comfortable. And in our particular application, this also goes into the comfort of a hard hat. And hard hats, to begin with, aren't that comfortable. So it's something we need to work on. And the second thing is, from a software perspective, we found so many times, it's still such a young industry. And so many times in developing our own application, we found like, oh, we're the first person who's tried to implement a feature this way, and it doesn't work. And there's not like a huge community out there in the same way that you would expect if you're developing an iOS app or an Android app, for example.
Right.
There's not a huge community where you could go out and ask your question and someone's already encountered that problem. A lot of times we're encountering those problems for the first time, and it's like there's no one out there who's done it before, and we just have to figure it out. And so one of the reasons that I'm so interested in being at a show like AWE is that I think that the people who are in this ecosystem right now and in this industry right now need to sort of inspire more people to join so that we can have a more vibrant community of developers and users. And if we aren't successful at that, then the industry won't get to where we want it to be. So we need to put a lot of effort into community building and ecosystem building.
Yeah. So can I touch on one thing?
Please, by all means.
So one of the things you said, Ken, really struck me is that how people will use the tech even though they're uncomfortable. And I think that's so true. And I saw it a lot at Ford. Somebody would be immersed in a vehicle for 4 hours, wearing a military-grade headset. And they would just stay and soldier on like, phew,
That's a long time.
a long time. And,
Yeah.
and it was like unbelievable to me. Like, do you need a break? Do you need some more? No, I'm good. Because the value that they got was so great that it was totally worth the time. And the lab was booked up pretty solid, so there was, it was hard to get time, so they'd come in at the tail end of a day and stay long. But that really blew my mind that many people, it wasn't just like one person just liked it or whatever, but it really taught me exactly what you're saying, that if there is a need, and it's different, that's something that's unique and different from the commercial, like the commercial space of, what am I trying to say, like the, not enterprise space, like the gamer space or entertainment space, sorry. That's a big differentiator, because in entertainment, if it just doesn't feel good, you're like, oh, forget it, I'm out of here, and you take it off. But if you have a job to do, like you want to do that job, and you'll do whatever you can to do a quality, good job and get the insight and the data that you need to do the right thing.
Yeah, and I think that's why we're so bullish on the future of this industry, is because if someone's willing to like endure some inconvenience, then there's some reason that they want to. There's some reason why they're willing to go through that, because it's worth it for them.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think absolutely, in terms of the practicality of the technology we're talking about, I do think it will be the like commercial applications that get us to the point where we have really slick and comfortable consumer devices, because the utility is there.
Yep, I agree.
Very good. We are a little bit early for the Q&A, but I have a feeling that our audience might actually have questions, so they're probably likely to be better questions than the one that I might come up with. So let's just start the Q&A. If any of you have questions, please come up to the mic and ask whatever questions that you might want to ask. We'd really welcome your input.
Well, Rupinder from engineering.com. Thank you very much. It was a great discussion, and gave me a lot of room to give me a lot of food for thought. We cover technology, including XR and the industries that you panelists are in. So this is great for us. But I'm left wondering this question. If there ever was a condition that made us want to jump into XR, all of us, the population at large, it would be the pandemic, right? If I was a conspiratorial person, I would think the XR industry created the pandemic so that people would jump on their products, right, and their technology. I understand that's not the case, so please, you don't have to answer to that. But why didn't it? I'm still wondering, like, we picked up other technologies so quickly, right? Like, there was Zoom. We never wanted to do video, right? But we picked up Zoom like nothing, like the next day, right? But we didn't pick up AR headsets or VR headsets, right? And you covered some of the reasons why, right? Oh, they were hard to wear for a long time, maybe too expensive, the technology's not there, but is there something else like we're missing? Why aren't we all home right now, right?
Yeah.
Or in our office with our headsets, right? What is preventing the world from embracing this 100%, right? 100%. Why? What's going on? So, sorry, it's not a definite question, but maybe you could discuss.
It's a good question, isn't it? So let's talk about maybe
Yeah.
Are there price barriers? Are there, like Ken pointed out, the comfort factor that still prevents us from wanting to keep it on? What do you think?
So I think the barriers to adoption, even in the pandemic world, are really around that the technology isn't right-sized for the function that needs to be studied. And until it is, there isn't that 30-second rule where you just get in and start doing your job. So it's really a matter of efficiency. I will say at Ford during the 2008, 2009 auto crisis that was going on, I mean, it was pretty bad in auto at that time, and there weren't budgets anymore, and it was just not good, and there wasn't money for creating physical models. And so all of a sudden I got really popular because you had to look, you had to study, you had to do, and even though it wasn't perfect, it was data points that people could consider and move forward. So the reason why I bring that up and correlate it to now is that provided some insight to somebody like me who was trying to provide engineering and design collaborative spaces for people. And the tech wasn't good enough at that time. And then I made a lot of improvements, and out of it came real-time ray tracing and VR and the layer on top that provided the process and all that good stuff. And now that is used, and it's part of how the product development is done. So I think what's happening is there's a lag point. We tried some things. I know many auto companies that have done collaborative VR reviews during COVID. And some of them were successful, many of them weren't. But people learned, and I think there's just a little delay. I really do believe it's happening. It's just we're not seeing it right now because these companies are integrating it in new ways because things have just changed. People aren't coming into the office like they used to, and they're not going to. Many companies are downsizing their real estate because they don't need to be there. And then I believe we will see in the next 2 years a lot of these changes being implemented in these companies. And then we'll go, yes, that's what they learned from now. But it just doesn't happen immediately, unfortunately.
Yeah. What do you think, Ken? What are the barriers? Zoom was free, practically free. So does it have to be a $9.95 a month kind of solution in order to make people adopt?
No, not at all. We think our customers will be eager to purchase $5,000 devices. So I don't think necessarily price is the problem. It depends on the application. But the way I would answer the question is actually that I think a lot of the killer apps for XR are being developed right now. And I just told you all about Hyperframe, but Hyperframe is not available on the Microsoft App Store for HoloLens right now. We'll be there next year. But in terms of speaking from a developer's point of view, we really felt that for our application, the HoloLens 2 was an enabler, and we needed that device. I don't think we got our first unit until January 2020. And for our business, it's a lot more than just the XR software that needs to be developed. We have to develop manufacturing processes that didn't exist before. We've had to develop materials that didn't exist before, all to create this like compelling and seamlessly integrated experience. And so it's like a lot of work to do that, and we haven't been able to launch it yet, even though we've been working very hard at that. And even if you use Elizabeth's paint sprayer idea as an example, like someone has to go create like a paint sprayer dummy with a microcontroller in it that communicates with your XR device, and this all takes a little bit of time. But I really do think that a lot of killer apps for XR are coming down the pike really soon, and it's going to change the way that that we use technology over the next decade.
All right, good. Any other questions, by the way? Yeah.
Hi, Ken. I'm curious why you guys chose framing as the main problem in construction to solve, and if you see any other areas that you could apply XR to, speed up construction by 10x.
Yeah, we actually think we can employ a similar approach to do a lot of different things in construction. The reason why we chose metal framing in particular is twofold. Number one, it's kind of like the core of every building. And our ambitions are to actually develop many other construction components into plumbing systems, electrical systems, mechanical systems, doors, windows, like you name it. But we wanted to pick a really good starting point that would enable us to focus very deeply on one particular problem and actually achieve a 10 or 15 times speed improvement. If we were to take a bigger bite out of the construction industry and try to figure out how you might construct an entire building and everything that goes in it using XR, we wouldn't have been able to focus so deeply on any particular component to make it at least an order of magnitude better. But I do think that there's a world of opportunity beyond framing, and I promise you Hyperframe is going to go after it.
Nice.
Very good. Any other questions, by the way? Yeah.
Hello, great talk. It's a two-part question, one for each of you. So from representative from Unity, do you see in the future a way where CAD/CAM models built in, let's say in AutoCAD, and you can take the BIM data from a skyscraper that's being built and seamlessly translate that CAD-oriented data into something, and the BIM data into an equivalent polygon model in 3D. So rather than having to remodel an entire building and hire an artist to do it, can you just take the architectural reference plans and translate that easily into 3D? So that's first part. Second part is, do you see, as a new building that just opened up in San Francisco from the Four Seasons, they obviously are promoting it heavily. They have their own website basically to sell you to buy an apartment in that building. Do you see where instead of doing a flat website, people may actually take that 3D model of the building, and instead of seeing just, okay, here's the website, here's how much it costs, here's pictures of the rooms, that you can actually walk into a virtual rendition of that building that's identical to what it's going to look like when it's actually built, walk through the hallways, walk in the lobby, walk through your own apartment, see what it would look like. Do you see that happening anytime in the near future? So that's my two questions. Thank you.
Okay. There are already some car configurators and things like that happening, right? Maybe you can talk about that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the answer, like from the Unity perspective, is yes, definitely. One of the value propositions of Unity for industry is it is a platform where you can take that CAD data and directly import it into the engine, and then take some analytic data, maybe some structural data about the structural integrity of components that comes from computer-aided engineering, bring that into the engine, and use some particle sim maybe to show that in the immersive space, and just take multiple data sets from different areas and then unify it in a common platform, and then experience it holistically. So that is the value, and it is doable, and many companies are producing a digital twin based on the Unity platform, and that twin is not only, of course, the geometry, but all of those other things that I talked about and more. And then using the technologies of machine learning and other good things to understand and analyze and predict and do and learn and all of that good stuff. So a big all caps yell mode yes on that.
Very good.
Yep.
Ken, I think you have the last word, so what do you think?
Oh, lucky me.
Yeah.
There are several applications today that will take a BIM and render it into polygons in an XR experience, so that's available. With respect to using VR to purchase real estate, absolutely. I think it will go far beyond that. I think you will decorate the condominium you just purchased in VR, and then maybe buy all of your decor through some VR or online experience, and it will all be decorated for you. I think that future is possible.
Very good. Well, thank you so much, both of you. I really appreciate you sharing your insight, and to the people watching online as well. We wish that you were here, but I'm glad that you are somehow virtually be part of it. So thank you very much. With that, I think we are out.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody. Yeah, all right.
Thank you, guys. Great job. Very interesting. All right, everybody. My favorite announcement of the day, it's lunchtime. So we got a lunch break here. Come back 1:45. We got a couple, 3, 4 more new things to discuss in the afternoon, and it should be exciting. While you're at lunch, get into the zone and see some of the other vendors that are out there. Check out all their stuff. So see you back here 1:45. Thank you.